Hey everyone, welcome back to the Free Life channel. Today I want to talk about the rest of the book by Brené Brown, Braving the Wilderness. We're going to be going through chapters 3 through 7, in which I, was so motivated for self-healing and self-growth that I've managed to read the book faster than I anticipated. And so I want to make a video summarizing the rest of the chapter and bringing everything together. So before we begin, go ahead and hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, as your support helps these videos to reach a larger audience. Thank you. So let's begin. We're talking about chapter 3 right now. And in chapter 3, we talk about the idea of high lonesome, and that being alone doesn't need to be lonely. And we should start to look at loneliness as unshameful. You shouldn't feel ashamed to be sitting at your house by yourself, or feel guilty that you're not out doing something, or maybe you're not out being productive. Because if you are sitting with yourself and you're sitting with intent and you accept the being alone as an opportunity of growth, it becomes productive. It becomes solitude, and there's joy in solitude. And so Brené Brown, she encourages us to shift our focus on not making being alone a negative thing, but something to be grateful for. And for me in my life, I really took this to heart, and I recognized within myself that I lived my life with the perception of fear. I'm afraid to be alone. I'm afraid of what others think about me. And if you remember, what happens on the inside is a direct reflection of what will happen on the outside. We see the world externally through the lens that we feel on the inside. And if you're living from a sense of fear, then you will find fearful situations. And I was afraid to be alone. I didn't accept myself. And I was always looking for ways to fit in. And I started to meditate on this idea, and I realized that this stems all the way back from my childhood. When I was a child, I was afraid to be alone, because when I was alone, I told myself those stories that I'm unworthy of love. And I told myself that the world is fearful. And I was always wondering what my friends were doing. I was never firm within myself. And I've carried this negative sense of being into my adult life. And as I've traveled around the world, I found myself always being surrounded by people. But even though I was surrounded by people, I was always had this feeling of not belonging and not fitting in. So I altered my own sense of self because I didn't fit with myself. And after reading this book and surrounding myself with my best friend Isaac, who has really encouraged me to love myself and he's given me the space and the time to love myself, I've realized that there's power in being alone. And now I feel as if I'm coming to interactions, into relationships from a different perspective. I'm looking at my interactions with others as my choice. I'm choosing to interact with you, not I'm doing this out of fear of being alone. So it gives me power, and it gives me more energy. And I also have gained the power to say no to people, which is really important, because if maybe I'm tired one night and I don't want to go to the party, I have the confidence now to say no, because I realize that I belong to myself. And as much as I'm not perfect by any means, I haven't grown tremendously accepting of myself overnight, but I'm taking steps, and I can see the truth in what Brené Brown is talking about in her book. And she says, when we're alone, we sometimes are talking to ourselves, right? And she talks about the idea that we exaggerate stories. So when you're alone, meditate on the idea that it's okay to be alone. And don't exaggerate the sense of reality. I'm alone. Nobody loves me. I'm alone. I have no friends. I'm alone. I'm a loser. I'm alone. I'm not productive. I'll be unsuccessful someday. That's not the truth. Use your time wisely and get to know yourself. And when you get to know yourself, things around you will naturally start to grow and become more secure. And you'll grow to love and act from a place of love. And as I just mentioned, if you're working from a place of internal love, the external world will begin to form to fit your expectations of reality. And then to make changes, you must be willing to try. Okay? We can sit here and talk about theory all the time. We can say this works, this works. You can believe it or not believe it, but nothing's going to change unless you actually have the courage to try. Take the first step and see what will happen. So then moving on to chapter 4, the title of the chapter is People Are Hard to Hate, Close Up, Move In. And this is the idea that once we've connected with ourselves and we decide to brave, so braving the wilderness has two different meanings. Braving the wilderness means finding the courage and the bravery to look at yourself and to be alone. The wilderness of your own heart, the wilderness of your own soul. And then there's society. And we all know that that is an absolute crazy, wild wilderness for sure. Full of untamed animals that we call human beings. And so as you're out in the world, braving the wilderness in terms of society means accepting others for who they are and their pain. And when you come out of your solitude and you take the courage to take that step into the wilderness with your new formed opinions on yourself, you're starting to act from a place of love and compassion, you will see the hatred and the pain that other people hold within themselves because of their own fear and their own anxieties of self-healing. And so when you're attacking the world from this place of love and compassion, you can let go of the anger, right? And you can encourage other people to do the same thing. And Brené Brown, she talks about this idea that anger is a catalyst for change. So anger is a high energy emotion. When you're angry, you're walking around, your face turns red, you're pumped up with blood, and maybe you want to yell or scream. Well, that's a great thing if you think about it. Because anger, it is high energy. You can do something. You can move around. And if you could shift that energy of anger into something productive, so instead of yelling or screaming, of course, you can do that as well. Maybe it'll help release some. But take that energy and apply it to your self-healing. Apply it to making steps towards your future, your goals. That's a great thing. And when you understand that, and you're coming to the world and to society from a place of love, you can help encourage others to think the same thing, or to at least help shape their mind to recognize this, okay? However, it's important for you to continuously think about the acronym BRAVING and to hold that on. Establish boundaries. Maybe you feel better, you feel healed, and you want to say, okay, I know my purpose and my mission. My purpose and mission is to belong in this moment. But don't forget to establish boundaries. Do not allow yourself to revert back by allowing somebody to cross your boundaries, okay? Because as Brené Brown says, being your authentic self, it's a high price to pay, but the reward is great. So when you're engaging in relationships and with people, focus on where you are now and where you want to go with this relationship, all right? And if there's conflict, you don't need to be afraid of it, because now you can understand that conflict doesn't need to be resolved, but you can transform that. And there's a term that she uses called conflict transformation. When you're not afraid of conflict anymore because you belong within yourself, you can transform that conflict into something productive, okay? And that is something that I highly encourage you to take on, and also myself that I'm working on personally. And when you're so a way that we can transform this conflict is when you are in a disagreement or you disagree with somebody about a topic, instead of criticizing them or saying you're wrong, say, tell me more. Try to understand where this person is coming from. And maybe that will help that'll help them to accept themselves a little bit more. And when you say, tell me more, you can see that other person starting to think, and you allow them to continuously rehearse their own sense of self. And the more you listen, the more you're able to point out ways in which somebody else can stop being so fearful. All right, so let's move on to chapter 5. It says, speak truth to bullshit. Sorry, kids. I'll say BS from now on. So speak truth to BS, but be civil. So we go through our lives telling ourselves stories, and belonging to yourself means to be truthful, right? And so there's BS and then there's lying. And Brené Brown, she defines these two things differently because they are different. And she says that lying is the defiance of the truth. You know that when you're lying, that there is a truth, and you're simply choosing to not say the truth. But when you're BSing, she says that this is a wholesale dismissal of the truth. When you're BSing, you're just making things up. And the more you BS, the more you pull yourself away from yourself, because you're not speaking from a place of truth, a place of belonging, a place of authenticity. You're speaking to satisfy the idea that you know something, and even if you don't know it. So when you're engaging with yourself or engaging with a friend or a colleague or a person, a stranger, call them out on their BS, but be civil about it. Be generous. Think about the G in the acronym BRAVING. Act from a place of generosity. And think that people aren't ill-intentioned as much as they're just unaware of their own sense of belongingness. It is okay to admit that you do not know something. And saying that you don't know something gives you power. You don't pull yourself away from your belonging, and you can connect with yourself by saying you don't know. Because the more you BS, the more that you're creating a sense of reality that yourself, because you know that you don't know something. And the more that you try to know, the other people, they also can pick up on that energy. And you're just further encouraging more BS, more lying, and more hurt and pain to persist in the world. And so it takes courage to be curious. And so if you don't know something, simply ask or do your own research and find out more. But that takes courage. And sometimes when you're engaging with other people and you're listening to them speak, maybe you decide to just be silent because they're powerful and you're a bit fearful. But remember, we're coming from a place of love now and a place of compassion because we belong to ourselves. We don't allow the external world to influence us the way that we used to. And when you remain silent in the midst of controversy, you're only encouraging the oppressor to continue doing what it is he or she is doing. Silence never helps the victim. It only encourages the oppressor to continue acting the way that they are. And so you should approach BS with civility. And civility means accepting without judgment, disagreeing with respect. Civility is the idea that everyone is heard and no one is ignored. That is what civility is. You can say, tell me more. Explain to me why you think that way. Share with me, please. And if you're a leader, if you're in your life and you find yourself in a position of leadership, you should encourage civility in the workplace, among your friends, and your family. Be civil, because civility promotes love, whereas hostility promotes pain and further hurt and further negative energy being passed around in this world. And so now we will move on to chapter 6, in which the title of this chapter is Holding Hands with Strangers. So this chapter talks about the idea that we have come to know ourselves and we belong to ourselves now. And a way in which we can belong or help others belong to themselves is through the ideas of collective joy. When we belong to ourselves, we are able to belong to a community. And collective joy and collective pain are things that we should pay attention to, because we realize that all of humanity, we are interconnected. And when we have collective experiences, it takes away the you versus I. You're either with me or against me mentality. And we see this mentality in the news, in sports, everywhere, all the time. You're either with me or you're not my friend. You don't support me. However, when we come from a place of belongingness, we're able to say, hey, wait a minute, think about this, right? And so I want to share just a couple of examples that I've come up with, and also with the help of Brené Brown, about collective joy and collective pain. So let's do the negative first, right, to get it out of the way, and we can end on the happy notes. So let's think about some collective painful experiences that humanity has experienced that we can resonate. All right. So first, the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. We saw the destruction and the turmoil. That hurts us because we understand the collectiveness. We belong to the world. We belong to ourselves and humanity. And if it was my house, I would be devastated. And I understand that. And therefore, I'm able to empathize with the people of Haiti. Also, 9/11, a tragedy. A collective experience for us in the United States. The terrorist attacks in Paris not so long ago. We stand with Paris. The world came together to feel the pain of those individuals that lost loved ones. And then Sandy Hook, that's another one. The coronavirus pandemic, that is a collective experience. And when we are able to identify with one another, we bring a sense of belongingness to society, and we understand that we're all connected and we're all striving for the same things. And it helps rid the world of a little bit of hate. And now the happy ones, the collective joy, right? So for me, I really thought about the song Baby Shark. I was watching a video the other day about these guys from Lebanon singing this song, and I thought it was so funny because no matter where you go, Baby Shark is a popular song, and everybody's laughing and experiencing a good time with that song. So that's collective joy. Another one is the World Cup in 2010 and the Waka Waka song by Shakira. The World Cup is the world's event, and it brings people together. Soccer or football is the world's game. It's the only game in the world that every person can play with simplicity, no matter if you're rich or poor, whatever. Football is connecting. And this song screams collective joy. Everyone knows this song, and everybody dances and feels good when they hear this song. All right? And then also the last one that Brené Brown points out is Harry Potter. That's collective joy. This book and this series, it swept across the world, and it brought people together. And so when we experience collective emotions, we understand that we don't just belong to ourselves, but we also belong to the world. But in order to pay more attention to and be more aware of these collective moments, we have to come from a place within. We have to slow down and look within ourselves and say, I belong to myself, and therefore I belong to the world. All right, and lastly, chapter 7. This chapter is called Strong Back, Soft Heart. Strong back, soft front, wild heart. And she talks about the idea that a lot of people in this world, we act from a defensive front to protect a weak spine. And so through the process of developing ourselves and belonging to ourselves, we need to strengthen our back so that we don't bend and break at the first sign of controversy, that we stand firm within ourselves. In the back, we need to have an open front. We need to be open to people, not armored, because armored is something that we've learned as children. But as we grow into adulthood, armament prevents growth in love and compassion from entering. And as we grow older, we should allow things to come inside of us more. And so she encourages us to think back to the ideas of braving and the boundaries that we need to set. When you belong to yourself, don't revert back. Don't let people cross your boundaries. The R is reliability. Do what you say you're going to do. This will allow you to not overwhelm yourself with too many tasks. You can choose the tasks that you're willing to do because they belong in your life. You don't overwhelm yourself and do things that pull you away from yourself. Accountability. Own your mistakes. Own your story. You are yourself and you deserve to be yourself. Remember, we talked about writing permission slips to be yourself, to love yourself. Be accountable to yourself. The V, vault. Promote a sense of trust. Be a vault. Don't share. That's not what stories that are not your stories to share. Keep confidence that people can trust you. And when you feel trusted, you're able to trust yourself more. And when you trust yourself more, you can belong to yourself more. The I is integrity. Do what is right, not the thing that's the easiest to do. Do the right thing in the right moment. The N is non-judgment. Don't judge yourself for failing. Don't judge yourself for wanting to be alone. Don't judge yourself for having bad days. Do not judge yourself for having good days. Simply be and acknowledge the idea that everything is passing and coming. We're all in this together, and therefore you should not practice judgment against others. Allow that hateful person to be hateful. Don't judge them. Wish them healing. Pray for them if that's your choice. But non-judgment will promote love and compassion, and it allows people to let go of their ego, and they don't have to justify themselves to you because you don't necessarily care. You care, but you don't judge. And the G is generosity. Come from a place of generosity and empathy. Do not think people are ill-intentioned or out to get you. Try to see the best in people because that will help them accept themselves a little bit more. So be brave. And as you venture out into the world with this newfound sense of self and belongingness to yourself, don't look for reasons to not fit in because you're always going to find that. Instead, look for ways in which you do belong in the situation because you belong in this moment. And what you look for, you're sure to find. So understand that you are the wilderness inside. And once you are able to tame the wilderness inside and brave the wilderness, you can take your steps out into society and you can now be a tree that's firmly grounded in your sense of self instead of a leaf that's blowing around aimlessly, just going with the flow or going where people push you or doing what others think is best for you. When you have confidence, I guarantee that you're going to see changes in your life and you're going to see a better quality of life for yourself. I really appreciate you guys sticking through these videos with me. This was my first book that I've read, and through me trying to belong to myself, I've managed to read 2 books in a week, and I feel confident. I feel smarter. I feel more aware of myself. And so I hope that these videos can continue to come, and I hope that the knowledge comes. And for me, I do these videos not for money or to gain attention or for my ego. I do this for my own self-healing because I'm listening to a book, I'm taking notes on the book, and then I'm speaking about the book. That's 3 methods of which I'm getting to retain the material that I'm learning. Because at the end of the day, I'm still working on belonging to myself. And so I hope that as time goes on, we can connect more and we can grow together and we can change the hateful world and the painful world to be something beautiful, full of love and compassion and collective joy. It's not to say that all the pain is going to go away, but you can make the steps to make the world a better place. You belong here. You belong here. You belong everywhere, and you belong nowhere. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I'll see you tomorrow.